This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. We actually sat down here today to talk about Chapter 31 of The Shadow Rising. Our symbol is the sunburst? Is that what I call it?
Oh, yeah.
The Whitecloak sunburst?
The Whitecloaks, yeah. The Whitecloak symbol.
And it is called Assurances.
What assurances are they referring to?
I'm thinking. I'm not sure. I don't know. Why is this chapter called Assurances? Anyone know? They all get healed. The Aes Sedai are like, yeah, we'll help as much as we can. Tam and Abel are like, we got your back, dude. I guess that's pretty reassuring.
I think it's more Perrin assures people that he's going to kill the trollocs. Maybe. Assures the girls he's going to get them out. I'm not really sure. Well, let's keep an eye out and see if we can spot it while we're going through the chapter.
Sure. I think it could have to do with a lot of different things.
As a theme.
Yeah, including between Ordeith and his captured Murdral. They make a deal as well. In a few minutes, Yvonne returned. "You can go ahead, Mistress Elvire," was all he said before he and Tomas both vanished into the brush again, without so much as the rustle of a leaf. "They are very good," Gaul muttered, still staring around suspiciously. "A child could hide in this," Chiad told him, slapping a red berry branch, but she watched the undergrowth as closely as Gaul did. None of the Aiel appeared eager to go on. Not reluctant, precisely, and certainly not afraid, but definitely not eager. One day, Perrin hoped to figure out what it was Aiel did feel toward Aes Sedai. One day. He was not particularly enthusiastic himself today. "Let's go meet these Aes Sedai of yours," he told Mistress Elvire gruffly. The old sick house was even more ramshackle than he remembered. A sprawling single story that leaned drunkenly, half the rooms open to the sky. A 40-foot sorghum tree poking up from... A 40-foot sour gum tree poking up from one. Well, sorghum's a crop, right?
Oh, no, sour gum, you're right. I always read that as sorghum. But sorghum's a grain, yeah.
That's what I did. The forest closed in on every side. A thick net of vines and briars snaked up the walls, covering the remaining thatch with green. He thought they might be all that was holding the thing up. The front door was cleared, though. He smelled horses, and a faint aroma of beans and ham, but oddly, no wood smoke. Tying their animals to low branches, they followed Mistress Elvire inside, where vine-shrouded windows admitted only dim light. The front room was large and bare of furnishings, with dirt in the corners and a few cobwebs that had escaped in obviously hasty cleaning. 4 blanket rolls were laid out on the floor, with saddles and saddlebags and neatly tied bundles against the wall, and a small kettle on the stone hearth gave off the cooking smells despite the lack of any fire. A smaller kettle seemed to be water for tea, almost at the boil. 2 Aes Sedai awaited them. Marin Elvire curtsied hastily, and launched into an anxious cascade of introductions and explanations.
Lots of tea. Whenever you've got Aes Sedai, tea.
And of course, one of the Aes Sedai just made a little heat.
Right.
So that they can cook without actually burning anything.
He's like, I don't smell any wood smoke, but they're making fire somehow.
You just put a strand of fire into the teapot.
And just tie it off. Or do you think they're doing like a rock below it or something? So you just have like a hot rock?
I don't know. Do you make a strand of fire into a coil and then just set the pot on it? Or do you put the strand of fire into the water? I have no idea.
I just had a thought. I don't know. That's why we're not apprentices in the White Tower, because that's what you have to learn. And whatever you do, don't pull the heat out of the pot into yourself and then into the fire, into the stone, because that'll burn you.
Unless you're round.
Well, if you're a woman, yeah.
And our Aes Sedai are Verin and Alanna, as we mentioned in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. A brown and a green. Alanna, who has recently lost one of her 2 warders to arrows from the Whitecloaks.
Yes.
Verin, who's a little too crafty. And a brown and a black. A brownie.
Someone called her a dark brown earlier.
Dark chocolate brownie.
And of course, in response, this is on like the next page, but in response to Mistress Elvire's apologies and explanations, Verin says, "It's quite all right. You did exactly the correct thing. Perrin is in the right hands now."
That's almost threatening.
It is. It's like, what does that even mean? And then she is excited to talk with the Aiel and with an Ogier. "I will pick your brain, Loyal. I have found some fascinating things in Ogier books. Loyal gave her a pleased smile.
He has read more books than almost anybody else. And Verin does love knowledge and being evil.
Yeah, he is. Loyal's, I guess, the second oldest person in the room. Verin's older.
She is older.
I don't think Alanna is, though.
No.
She's pretty young, yeah?
I thought she was like the same age as Suan and Moraine.
40s, I think. I'm going to look that up really quick so I'm not getting corrected in an email a week from now.
The preemptive, real-time follow-up to avoid being yelled at.
She's between 35 and 55 years old. The Wheel of Time companion says she's 49 when she dies. So,
40s.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
Swan's age.
Slightly older. She was like an apprentice when they were novices. And yet she still acts like a child.
In a way. She's kind of playful. Okay, well, she does some regrettable things later, but I find Alanna to be mainly amusing until she forespawns Rand.
I do not find her amusing in the slightest.
Oh, there's a moment here where, Tam is talking and Alana's just staring at him, and I'm just imagining she's like, new order,
It's a good shot with that bow.
Yeah, I mean, Tam would be the best order ever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, there's land to contend with, but...
Well, yeah.
Top 10.
I'd give him top 5. I do think Gareth Bryn was pretty badass as a warder.
Totally.
Yeah. Maybe he was a warder. Maybe he is.
Tam is indeed the man.
It would explain his prowess a lot if he was a warder for some reason.
Bonded.
Yeah.
To...
Some random Aes Sedai. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. Not likely.
Yeah, and RJ gives us a little bit of, for lack of a better term, a little bit of context to show us that Tam is a human,
Right, right.
It was, I think, in Rand's memory, at some point, he, remembers the year that Tam didn't win the archery competition. Just Abel beat him, I guess.
Someone must have nudged him or something. There's no way he was not with the Void. You saw him we see him take a raven in the head.
That's true. He shoots a raven in the face in a minute here, which is impressive considering a raven's face is about twice, 3-4 times the circumference of an arrow.
Quarter-sized, maybe?
Yeah, it would be like shooting a quarter.
Yeah.
Which I probably couldn't shoot a quarter with a bow at 10 yards.
I'm not sure if I put the tip of the arrow against the bird's face, I would hit it.
It'd still miss.
I'm pretty sure because I'd release and it would jerk to the side. I haven't shot a bow, so I don't know how.
Oh, we should go sometime. I've had rough designs on. There's an indoor archery shooting range in Portland that I've been meaning to go to.
I'd love to try.
Forever.
Yeah.
I have my old bows just unstrung. I even have the one that I learned on, so it's pretty light, pretty easy to use.
And I'm not a super weak person. I could probably do a decent bow, draw strength.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
A fun afternoon.
Yeah,
I would love to. And I haven't actually shot anything in years because I'm always in the city now. There's nowhere to.
Right.
Can't shoot stuff.
Well, I've got the car. So he thinks back to Egwene's warning about Alanna and Elida because she knows too much about him and basically the three to Verin. Mm-hmm. How did she learn about that stuff? Was she always one of Verin's? Did she learn about it through Verin?
Alanna and Verin have been together a lot over the last year or so, and Alanna was in Shinar.
Yeah, that's
she
right.
Came with Swan, Verin, Moraine, Alanna.
Faldara, not Shinar. Well, isn't Faldara in Shinar?
It's the
capital. Okay.
Yeah. Discord is saying Falmaran is the capital of Shinar, and Faldara is a smaller city, keep, whatever. Do not trouble yourself, Verin told her to Mr. Salvier. Perrin and I are old friends now. I understand him. Her dark eyes glittered at him for a moment. We will take care of him. Alanna's cool words seemed open to interpretation.
Again, a little threatening.
I feel like she's scouting, man. She's got this Perrin, this Tam guy, all suitable orders.
She did just lose one, and she's agreeing. She likes having multiple.
Yeah, and I don't know how many she has at this point, but she says, I brought 2 orders with me, and she has 1 now, so when she mentions it. I assume she only had 2. Oh, and of course, at some point mid-conversation, Alanna's saying, are you alone, or did the other 2 return as well? And Perrin looks at her and says, why are you here?
And then she, like, stalls for a while.
And they continue on talking, and then Perrin... And then they talk to Perrin some more, and he says, "You still haven't answered the question."
He's very single-minded.
It's a good question.
Yeah. What are you
Why
doing
are
here?
you here?
And then we get the whole story about showing up because Moraine found the Two Rivers girls who can channel, and they're looking for more. And they found a bunch.
Yeah. The two most powerful channelers in like 100 years to be brought to the tower, and she found them accidentally, basically. It was like, if she had time to search, I bet she would have... They assumed she would have been able to find more, and they confirmed they have found 4 already.
And, I mean, would you agree that that's not the only reason they've come to the Two Rivers?
I mean, I had that thought as well, but I can't point to what another reason would be, other than, of course, it's the home of the 3 Verin.
Yeah, I think they're there because they're thinking
Checking it out.
Verin might show up. Because it's
a long way out of the way for, like, a tourist trip, So they must have some reason. I can't imagine it's only the girls, though.
Well, that's where I look at Verin's motivations, and she's a dark friend, and she may be getting orders from the Black Ajah sending her places. We really don't know what she's been up to.
No. Yeah, it just seems like a really long way out of the way for 2 powerful and experienced Aes Sedai to go scouting, right? Like, send, a recently raised woman or some, like, accepted or something. Why send your best to, you know what I mean?
Or send some blues, because, like, if you already got 1 blue to do it, and you have the blue as the Armelin seat, send a couple more blues. Why send a yellow and a green? Or a brown and a green, I mean.
I don't know.
So, are they even being sent? The Verin and Alanna relationship is one of those things that their motivations, why they stay together and why they end up where they end up, has always seemed a little mysterious to me, and I've always been questioning, because they just know so much. Why would they end up where they ended up? Why are they, there's so many places they could go. Why do they end up in the Two Rivers?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just seems... Maybe that is why Verin's there. I mean, Slayer's there. Why is Slayer there?
Yeah, to kill Fain. I do think Slayer is there to kill Fain. Or he could also be there to just harass the Two Rivers. I think that might be on orders of the Black.
Just to try to draw around? Same thing Fain's trying to do?
Basically, yeah. Because I think all the trollocs and the Myrddraal are there at the request of Slayer. And Slayer is the tool of one of the Forsaken. So if Slayer is there at the behest of one of the Forsaken. Do we know which Forsaken?
I can't say that we do for sure.
Now, I think that there's a little bit about Bayar here, and we know that he's been influenced by Grendel. And one of Grendel's main goals was taking down Perrin. So it could be her. It could be Ishmael, who sent Slayer before he died.
I would think that's most likely. Do we ever see Slayer with the Forsaken?
No, but we know he's their tool. They talk about him as one of their tools, and he only works for the Forsaken. Like, if he's off doing something, it is at the behest of one of the Forsaken. And most likely, early on, he was the tool of Ishmael.
That must be it.
But we do know that we believe Bayar, on his way back from Falma, was influenced by Grendel, and perhaps which is why he's so insistent here that Perrin is the one responsible for Bornhald father's death, even though it seems like it wasn't obvious from his POV.
That's something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
The Grendel theory, which I think is a pretty popular one. I feel like most people agree. There's kind of a cute conversation here. Perrin continues to demand for them to explain why they're here.
Do you think that's because once Alanna takes over, it's because Verin's done lying?
Well, she doesn't say anything very directly, so her answer is a very Aes Sedai answer either way.
Right.
When Perrin says, "Why are you here?" Verin never says, "We came here because." She never says that. She just starts telling a story, which is one of those Aes Sedai moves, where this would appear to be an answer, but it might not be a direct answer. Where she says, like, every year we find fewer and fewer girls, here are the reasons, and here are the debates in the hall about it, and this and that. And then she even includes a cute little addendum where she's like, the whites have suggested that when they catch male channelers, they should breed them with female channelers because we've been culling the herd for thousands of years. And Verin said that she told Alviarin that she could be the first one since it was such a good idea. And
Why don't you have children?
Yeah, go for it. You can start sleeping with strangers.
Sounds great. Bear lots of children and then give them away.
Which,
or do
yeah, really drives the point home.
Yeah. God, that kind of reminds me of like if a girlfriend was like, "Why are you at the bar?" and you started telling a story about how, well, I went to the grocery store to get groceries, and I brought them home and put them away and cleaned the house and decided I wanted to get some food, and nothing really looked good, so I ended up.
Yes.
So and now I'm here. But why are you here? The answer is to drink.
Right.
But the story I told sure sounds like an answer.
Almost.
Almost.
You know?
Almost. Alanna took up the explanation, perhaps to forestall the other Aes Sedai's tendency to ramble. Would you like to take up this chapter to forestall my tendency to ramble?
Alanna, speaking now, says, "Here in the 2 rivers where I expect no Aes Sedai has visited in 1,000 years, Moraine found 2 women who could not only be taught to channel, but had the ability born in them. Not to mention 3 to Verin." Verin murmured into her tea.
Not to mention. Like that, which is like right there. That's the answer. That's the actual answer to the question, is the 3 to Verin.
That's the real, yeah.
That's the real answer. At the end of the whole story, after Alanna tells her a little bit, Verin just slips it in there casually.
Young women who can be trained to channel is just like a bonus, I think.
Oh, and definitely a big bonus. Like they escort them all the way back to Tarvalin, and they keep them under like careful guard because they want those girls.
Don't they end up leaving with like a dozen or something?
Something like
that. They find
a
lot more over this book.
Because Rand runs into him and he like gets a bunch of stories from home, and they tell him about the changes that are happening in Caemlyn. Because they're heading back to the tower, and then the split happens, and so there's a whole... They find out in Caemlyn that they're going to head to Salidar instead.
"Do you have any idea," Alanna went on, "how many towns and villages we usually must visit to find 3 girls with the ability inborn? We found 4 who can be trained, and 1 child I think has the ability inborn, but they're not sure because she is only 12 years old."
Which is still a little young for the girls.
Yeah, but I mean, they're going to take her anyway.
Sure. Oh, are they taking her, or are they going to let her... Are they coming back for her? I couldn't remember. Did they say?
I assume they take her. They usually want them as young as they can get them.
Agreed.
It's better for...
And especially if it's inborn, they don't want to take the chance that she might have it come out later when nobody's there.
Yeah. They also mentioned that Moraine discovered 2 stories of women who had died before she found Egwene and Nynaeve, because they just didn't make it through the channeling sickness.
Right.
Which means they're particularly powerful, I feel like I should add. Like Egwene level.
Not necessarily. I think someone who's not powerful can also die from channeling sickness. I don't think power has much to do with it, to be honest.
Oh, well, maybe, but I feel like the...
And we see a lot of women with the spark who aren't necessarily more powerful than those who are trained.
Oh, really? I always kind of associated with like, women who are more powerful, like the ability comes out, or is more likely to, than women who can...
I would consider it like natural distribution, so that like on average people who have the spark have a natural distribution of power that's higher than those who have to learn, but there's quite a bit of overlap there. So there's a lot of Aes Sedai more powerful than some of the few who are inborn with the spark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I thought the same thing too, but like as I've done more research and as I've looked into Aes Sedai and looked at like how powerful they are and whether or not they're warders, I've come to realize there's really no correlation that I can find between the power, other than our main characters who are all. But like I feel like that's like
almost all born with the spark.
Yeah,
including Moraine.
That's a higher level. There is a like super high level that you're going to just be. If you're that powerful, you are going to channel. But it's a small group. Like Forsaken level is what I think of it as.
Fair enough. I thought it was kind of interesting that Verin says, I think like those were only the girls from Watch Hill. Terran Ferry was a disappointment, though. I thought that was interesting. Too much interchange of bloodlines with the outside, I suppose, she muses.
They just ain't inbred enough. They got too many of them outside genes. We keep it all in the family, and the two ravers. Keeps us powerful. Sure does.
I hope they don't actually talk like that.
That would be... I would actually find that fucking hilarious.
Really bad Southern accent.
They just had, like, the worst, like, West Virginia Southern accent.
Scurvy drawl.
We like a pig, boy. Yeah, exactly.
Deliverance
Deliverance accents.
Perrin was like getting more agitated. He says, why are you just waiting around here? Why
aren't you fighting? Why aren't you killing all these trollocs and Murdral? And they're like...
He says, I don't understand why you aren't doing these things. And Alanna's response is, you certainly do not understand. And she explains. Thought that was a good cutting response. But she goes on to explain that the Children of the Light saw one of her warders from a distance and filled him with arrows.
Owen is his name. The one who was mowed down by arrows.
I felt every arrow that struck him until he died. I felt him die. And she goes on to explain, there's only so much one Aes Sedai could do. Or to eat two, even.
Against Murdral and hundreds of trollocs. I mean...
And Verin adds, we have been picking off trollocs here and there, but if they all came at once, we'd be dead as well.
Which do you think is more powerful, Moiraine with her Angreal or these two women?
Combined? I mean, Verin and Alanna have to be more powerful combined.
See, I would go with Moiraine.
Moiraine with the Angreal?
Yeah.
I mean, how much more powerful does that make her?
Well, first of all, I think she's already a little more powerful than either of these two, just on her own.
Yeah, but I think they're close in power. Alanna, Verin, and Moiraine.
But that's a powerful Angreal.
I still have the Alanna page open. She's rated 17.5.
That's the X factor. In raw power, Alanna might be close, but
she kills trollocs with mean looks. Alanna and Verin have the exact same power rating, apparently. Did not know that. I'm going to look at Moiraine. Of course, it doesn't tell us anything about the Angreal, but...
Yeah, I don't really know if there is a power scale with the Angreal. I think it can take you up, 3 levels? 5 levels? I don't remember if there was a number.
13.1.
So she's got a lower number, which means she's about 5 levels. That's significantly more powerful than either one of them.
It is.
Plus the Angreal. Not to mention all her years traveling. I'm gonna guess that I in a straight up fight, I would put my money on Moiraine with the Angreal against the two of them. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
That's where my money goes. And I like how Perrin speculates that, he's thinking about, why don't they just do what Rand does? And he's like, well, Rand's probably a little more powerful than the two of these put together. And I'm just like, he could take the two of them and just like children. It'd be like children fighting a grown man. Like, their power level is pretty insignificant compared to his at this point. What he did with Trollocs is crazy. I mean, and I guess at that point he also had Kalendor. So, these two women without Angreal getting to the point where he has, one of the most powerful male channelers with one of the most powerful Saw Angreal, it's not going to happen. They're not creating swirling lightning that's going to kill all the Trollocs. They just don't have the power. One lightning bolt at a time.
Moving forward.
Loyal talks about locking the Waygate, which we later find out from Slayer kills a lot of Trollocs.
Yeah. And the Black Wind is right behind them.
Yeah. So it's just hanging out by that gateway, and Trollocs are just marching right into it. And it's just like, tasty souls, acrid souls, twisted souls.
Yum, yum, yum.
Yum, yum, yum. And it gets a little more crazy.
Lock the Waygate. And Verin's like, I knew they were using the ways. How else could they have been getting here?
Because they can't use portals. Kills all the... I almost feel like that was a little bit of a retrocon, just to be like, oh crap, why aren't they all why aren't Trollocs swarming everything everywhere as soon as the Forsaken get out? Because they have the ability to make gateways. It's like, oh, well, Shadowspawn die if they go through a gateway. Okay, yeah, I'm sticking with it.
They also can't travel through Teleran Riyadh. You're right, though. It's a good kind of power down. There's a cute little part when Alanna is going around healing everyone.
Interesting. We know that healing lets you sense the basic location of somebody. I have to wonder if the reason they wanted to do the healing was to get a really basic, if they come close, location sensor on the boys.
I didn't think of that, but probably.
Yeah.
Because it's not really necessary. Well, I'll read this part. This has gone too long since it was done. Even healing will leave a scar now. Alanna talking about Perrin's face. I don't need to be pretty, he muttered. Just well enough to do what he had to. And Fail laughed aloud. Who told you that? Fail said. Surprisingly, she shared a smile with Alanna. Perrin frowned, wondering if they were making fun of him. But before he could say anything, the healing hit him. Like being turned to ice. All he could do was gasp. The few moments before Alanna released him seemed endless. When he had his breath again, the Green Sister had Bane's flame-haired head between her hands. Verin was seeing to Gaul, and Shiad was testing her left arm, swinging it back and forth with a satisfied expression. Fail took Alanna's place beside Perrin and stroked a finger across his cheek, along the scar beneath his eye. A beauty mark, she said, smiling slightly. A what? Oh, just something Domani women do. It was just an idle comment. Despite her smile, or maybe because of it, he scowled suspiciously. She was making fun of him, only he did not understand how exactly.
And now Perrin looks way more badass with a scar on his face. This is leveling up Perrin. It's like he got a new skin in the video game. This is like Perrin with a scar. He's got the axe. He's got the hammer.
Looks pretty badass.
Golden eyes. And he's about to become the king of, this is the Perrin who becomes the king of the Two Rivers with the golden eyes and the scar and the beard. And that makes him look totally different than the young boy Perrin that left the Two Rivers, enough to make people sort of disassociate him from the, boy they spanked 2 years ago or whatever. Like, weird story they tell, because spanking is something that happens apparently in Robert Jordan's life a lot.
I mean, I think it's something that happens just in the world a lot.
Not in my life.
It's out there, and things have changed.
You're like, you should try it sometime.
Yvonne slipped into the room, whispered in Alanna's ear, and vanished outside again at her whisper. He hardly made a sound, even on the wooden floor. A few moments later, the scrape of boots on the steps announced new arrivals. Perrin sprang to his feet as Tam Althor and Abel Cawthon appeared in the doorway, bows in hand, with the rumpled clothes and gray-flecked two-day beards of men who had been sleeping rough. They had been hunting. 4 rabbits hung at Tam's belt, 3 at Abel's. It was obvious they were expecting the Aes Sedai, and visitors too, but they stared in amazement at Loyal, more than half again as tall as either of them, with his tufted ears and broad snout of a nose. A flicker of recognition crossed Tam's bluff, lined face at the sight of the Aiel. Tam's gaze only rested thoughtfully on them for a moment, though, before coming to rest on Perrin with a start almost as big as for Loyal. He was a sturdy, deep-chested man, despite hair that was nearly all gray, the sort it would take an earthquake to knock off his feet, and more than that to fluster. "Perrin, lad," he exclaimed, "is Rand with you? What about Matt?" Abel added eagerly. He had the look of an older, graying Matt, but with more serious eyes, a man not thickened much by age, with an agile step. "They are well," Perrin told them, "in Tyr." He caught Verin's glance from the corner of his eye. She knew very well what Tyr meant for Rand. Alanna hardly seemed to be paying attention at all. "They would have come with me, but we didn't know how bad things are." That was true on both counts, he was sure. Matt spends his time dicing, and winning, and kissing the girls. Rand? Well, the last I saw of Rand, he was wearing a fancy coat and had a pretty golden-haired girl on his arm.
The daughter hair of Andor.
He does leave quite a bit out.
Yeah, just a little bit.
There's a little internal dialogue about it that Perrin has, like, he doesn't want to be like, well, your son's the Dragon Reborn, and here's,
I was gonna say, like, we all do that if our best friend's dad's like, so how's little Johnny doing at college? You're like, well, he
wasted.
Yeah, he's totally wasted all the time, 100%.
It's not the first detail you want to.
He loves hanging out with the women and gambling, and yeah, he really enjoys art class. He does mention that Rand is in Tyr, which is, the verification for Verin that Rand has Kalendor. I would assume that's the first she's finding out about it, because
it only happened like last week.
Yeah, I mean, they traveled through the ways. It's unlikely that news has been able to travel that fast. Well, a couple of weeks. I thought that they were in Tyr for a couple of weeks before the whole
that's
bubble
true.
of evil. Yeah,
maybe a month, but too long for that. Tyr's the other side of the continent.
Right. It's unlikely that news will have traveled. The Two Rivers is the last place to find out anything.
Yeah. As the three men started out, carrying their bows, Fail rose to follow. Perrin shook his head at her, and amazingly, she sat back down. He wondered if she was ill. After pausing, so Tam and Abel could admire Stepper and Swallow, they strolled off away under the trees. The sun slanted westward, lengthening shadows. The older men made a few jokes about his beard, but they never mentioned his eyes. Strangely, the omission did not bother him. He had more important worries than whether somebody thought his eyes peculiar. Responding to Abel's query as to whether that thing was any good for straining soup, he rubbed his beard and said mildly, "Fail likes it." "Oh-ho," Tam chuckled. "That's the girl, is it?" "A spirited look to her, lad. She'll have you lying awake nights trying to tell up from down."
Understatement.
"Only one way to handle that sort," Abel said, nodding. "Let her think she's running things. That way, when it's important and you say different, by the time she gets over the shock of it, you'll have matters arranged as you want, and it will be too late for her to badger you about changing it." That seemed to Perrin a great deal like what Mistress Alvir had told Fail about handling men. He wondered if Abel and Marin had ever compared notes. Not likely. Perhaps it was worth trying with Fail, only she seemed to have her own way in any case.
I feel like that's part of relationship, is like you have to care about the things you care about and let the other person care about the things they care about. And only when it's important are you going to, like, really put up a fuss.
You gotta shrug off the little shit.
Exactly.
Everybody has annoying personality quirks.
I don't.
And you see, that's your quirk.
Yeah, right there. I was going to say, I've only got one. That's I'm doing pretty good then.
They go on for a while. Perrin asks, "Are you staying here?" They're like, No. But we came out here meaning to stay here, but the Aes Sedai were already took this building over.
Inhabiting
what's
this,
left of it.
Yeah, structure. He says, Alanna let it slip that you're Verin, so are you? And he's like, well,
yeah.
I haven't seen it in me or Matt, which is, and then, of course, immediately, Abel's like, so you're hanging out with Ogier, Aiel, and Ice, and yeah. You have
Aes Sedai
golden
and
eyes.
Mortars.
Yeah.
They don't mention his eyes, and I think it's kind of along a similar line to right at the end of that Alanna let slip that you're Verin, all three of you. I've heard Aes Sedai can't lie. I think that's Abel that says that.
Mm-hmm.
Perrin says, "Oh, not me or Matt." And Tam glances at him and notes that he doesn't say anything about Rand, but he also doesn't bring it up either.
No, because
I think there's a good amount of that going on. Like, Tam and Abel get that crazy stuff has gone down and things have changed. So they're not focusing on things like, your eyes look a little different. What's up with that? What's up with that? They're just like, let's get to the important things here.
Do you think Tam suspects Rand is the Dragon Reborn at this point? He knows they're Verin.
I would say no. I think that he's maybe, and I'm guessing because there's really not much to go on, but I would think that he's, maybe thinks he's the next, important Verin person in the world. Almost certainly being that I said I can't lie. But, if I were in his position, I would stop probably before, like, the most significant Verin that could be born. You know what I mean?
Nodding.
Like, he's up there somewhere, but, I wouldn't expect that he's this legendary character. It's not the first place I would go. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point he doesn't have enough information to put it together. I think if he had all the information, he would put it together, but I just don't think he knows enough.
Perrin says, "Oh, none of this has anything to do with being Verin.
No,
the Ogier's just a friend, and Gaul is too. Bane and Chiad are Fael's friend."
It's all complicated, but not Verin. Just complicated.
And she's not like in line to inherit a throne or anything.
No.
He doesn't even know about that yet.
No, he doesn't.
So, who is
her father's
your
a
dad?
fur trader, as far as he knows.
I mean, he is. Aes Sedai misdirection.
Everybody does it.
Just wealthy guy, sits around a lot on a throne.
So Tam and Abel tell the story about going to the White Tower. So we sort of get the verification from their POV that the story that Lanfear told Matt is true.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You remember the story that Lanfear told Matt?
Yes.
About his father showing up to the White Tower and
that Tam and
asking about
Abel
him?
went all the way to the White Tower.
Totally. So this is confirmation that she wasn't lying there.
Yeah.
I mean, also the Amerlin confirms it as well, but I just, from at least their POV, like, Moraine was not watching Matt because she liked his grin. Because he blew the horn. So he kind of covers up the whole, like, Matt blowing the horn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lies his way around that.
They knew that Swan was hiding something, but they had them on, just said they just kind of kicked them out of the tower and shoved their pockets full of gold and were like, get out of here. It's all under control. Then as they're talking, Tam tries to tell Perrin about his family, and he says, I already know. And Raven lands on a branch as they're talking and is looking down at them. Perrin tries to shoot it, but Tam and Abel are faster.
That's where we see that they are actually better shots than he is, despite being a very good shot.
Right. The Aes Sedai told us about them, the Ravens, Tam said, spying for fades, and we spread the word. The women's circle did too. Nobody paid much mind until they started attacking sheep, though, pecking out eyes, killing some. The clip will be bad enough this year without that. Not that it matters much, I suppose. Between Whitecloaks and trollocs, I doubt we'll see any merchants after our wool this year. And then we see Abel say, some fool has gone crazy over it, Abel added. Maybe more than one. We found all sorts of dead animals. Rabbits, deer, foxes, even a bear. Killed and left to rot. Not even skinned. Which is Slayer, of course.
Right, and Perrin calls it out right there. In the next paragraph, he's like, oh, that's Slayer.
He knows it. Yeah, he doesn't say anything out loud, but...
No, he thinks it to himself. Slayer here, and not just in the wolf dream. Slayer and trollocs.
The man in the dream had seemed familiar.
I think that's because he looked like Lan.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Because he hasn't met Lord Luke yet. And it was Esam he saw in the dream, not Luke.
Oh, right. Perrin scuffed dirt and leaves over the dead raven with his boot. There would be plenty of time for trollocs later. A lifetime, if need be. I promised Matt I'd look after Bode and Eldrin, Master Cawthon. How hard will it be to get them? And the others free? Hard, Abel sighed, his face sagging. Powerful hard. I got close enough to see Natty after they took her, walking outside the tent where they're holding everybody. Oh, and he says, I'll just continue on. I could see her, with a couple of 100 Whitecloaks between us. I got a little careless, and one of them put an arrow through me. If Tam hadn't hauled me back here to the Aes Sedai... ... I actually didn't catch that when I was powering my way through to prep for this. That Abel got shot.
Yeah, oh, totally. Well, that's why they're stocking up on rabbits, because he says, oh, we took advantage of the Aes Sedai healing once, and
so now
we
have
feed
to do
it again. Yeah.
So they can't say that we never did anything for him.
Exactly. Perrin's like, well, nice try, but they've already got a hook set in you, so too fucking late.
Tam says it's a good-sized camp right under Watch Hill, 700 or 800 men, patrols day and night.
Yeah, just the general situation that you've got Whitecloaks all around.
100 men in Terran Ferry.
Right. And Perrin's like, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think he uses a different phrase. Abel says caught between two millstones. And it's like, well, that's why Perrin comes up with the idea of gathering the villagers together so that they can protect themselves. If you're isolated in little farms, you're going to get run off by any force.
Picked off one by one.
Exactly.
Right. They should stop hoping and do something.
A warder once told me the Trollocs call the Isle Waste the dying ground. That was Lan, right? I mean to make them give that name to the two rivers.
Badass.
Very badass. I love that line. It's one of my favorite Perrin lines. And he does. He kills them all.
Yeah. Perrin, Tam began, then stopped, looking troubled. Perrin knew his eyes caught the light, there in the shadows under the oak. His face felt carved from rock. Tam sighed. First, we'll see about Natty and the others. Then we can decide what to do about the trollocs.
Truly dangerous, Perrin.
Don't let it eat you inside, boy, Abel said softly. Hate can grow till it burns everything else out of you. Nothing is eating me, Perrin told them in a level voice. I just mean to do what needs doing. He ran his thumb along the edge of his axe. What needed doing?
Killing a lot of trollocs. His hate keeps him warm.
And then there is a Whitecloak section.
Yeah, followed shortly by an Ordeith section.
Yeah, I didn't pull a ton out of this Whitecloak section. It's Dane Bornhald's perspective.
I had a couple of questions I wanted to raise as we go through it.
Sure. As we open up here, he's Dane Bornhald is returning from a patrol where he brought 100 men, and he's coming back with 11 dead and 20 some odd injured. And he kind of notes that the only patrols that get ambushed are the ones that he leads.
All right, so my assumption is most of the trollocs in the Two Rivers were brought there by Slayer and not at Fain's discretion. But
Right.
Fain is the one who would know and target the patrols with Bornhald in them.
You see, at the end of I agree with you. And at the end of, after this, there's the Ordeith, just like a page of his perspective. He's captured a Myrddraal and is basically saying, like, I'll torture you endlessly if you don't do what I tell you to do. And the Myrddraal agrees. We don't know what, but it could be that. He could be capturing these Myrddraal and having them.
So you think that Myrddraal is not the first?
I think so. Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Or suspect, I should say. Because it's just a theory, but...
No, that makes sense, that he's...
Right, because without directly coming into contact with the Trollocs, there's no other way for him to influence what they do, other than if he could be in contact with the Myrddraal that are leading the groups.
And he also said, they say here that the Trollocs are particularly bad down south near Devon Ride, which is also where Fain spends a lot of his time. So I think, he's been taking his, I like Morgaine's term, his gray cloaks, his corrupted Whitecloaks down there, and basically capturing Fades and turning them to his cause.
He also, Dane Bornhald thinks that Ordeith has something to do with it, but he can't actually, there's not very much he can do about that because his superior essentially sent Fain on this mission with him.
Pedron Nile, which was entirely influenced by Fain, right? That was, Pedron Nile was under Fain's influence. That was entirely Bornhald's mission here, and all the Whitecloaks to harass the Two Rivers was all orchestrated by Fain and his influence over Pedron Nile.
Yeah, and Bornhald suspects that Fain has something to do with all this. Like with his, every time he goes out on a patrol, that's the time that an ambush happens.
Mm-hmm.
And knows that, or he says it outright, that Ordeith is keeping secrets. Like he goes away on these missions, self-appointed missions, and doesn't say anything about what he's doing, where he's going, nothing. And so when Bornhald confronts him in this section here, Fain doesn't obviously tell him. It just says, like, oh, it has to be a secret because agents of the shadow are everywhere, blah, blah, blah,
I'm on secret missions, yeah, and it's like, nah, it's not. He's just out there capturing Fades and forcing them to do what he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also notice here in the beginning, it talks about how Bornhald, never drinks. And if you watch his character arc over the series, he descends into a pretty, ridiculously sloppy alcoholic.
Good catch. I didn't really think about that. I just noted that he was drinking the local brandy, which apparently is pretty good.
Yeah. But no, it starts out with him being like, he seldom drank, but, well, why not? I'll have one. And then, after everything, he's like, oh, I need a drink. And then when you see him, hanging out with Bayar and, confronting Perrin, he's like, I'm a sloppy drunk and you killed my father. It's that bad.
I think the next thing that I have is... this is where Bornhald, in the conversation between Fain and Bornhald says, I covered up what you did at the Ibara farm because I had to. Mm-hmm. He's like, what the hell are you doing out there? I can't have, if they think that the Whitecloaks are doing things like that, I'll have...
slaughtering farms.
I won't just have trollocs to deal with anymore. I'll have to fight the villagers as well.
Which would not go well for them.
No. I mean, there's only 800 of them.
And there's also the traveling people, and this is Rain's crew.
Right.
That they run into.
Kind of a quick mention that they've been captured there as well.
Right. And they send them south. And that's where I believe most of them end up getting slaughtered, right? Because they end up taking refuge in the Two Rivers. But I think they're slaughtered by Trollocs at Fain's direction, because Fain hates the Tinkers.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about this, but I think that the Trollocs that end up attacking the Tinkers are probably Fain's Trollocs.
I would buy it.
Yeah.
I'll read this little bit. Ordeith saying, do you doubt the shadow will do whatever is needed to stop me? What? Do you doubt it? Ordeith leaned forward intently. You saw the gray men. Bornhald hesitated. Gray men? Where do they come from?
Slayer.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I think Slayer was trying to take out Ordeith, and he sent Grey Men.
After Ordeith.
After Ordeith, absolutely. Because Slayer talks about the fact that he is partially there to wipe out the abomination. So I absolutely believe. And again, we know Grey Men only work at the direction. Grey Men can't be really corrupted. I don't think Fain can corrupt them to his side. He has to kill them. I think that we see them as only working at the direction of Forsaken.
Ordeith is the one that kills them.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm making an assumption here, but Fain doesn't seem it doesn't seem like the Grey Man effects work on him as well. He's the only one that sees the Grey Man out of all the children.
I mean, I certainly think that the Shadar Logoth evil responds to the shadow. And I'm guessing that he would sense, in the same way that, like, Perrin smells something that's wrong, kind of almost a warder sense of evil, but different.
And he's, like, double shadow, so he might even get the resonation that, like, when two people deep in the shadow get close to each other, they can feel it. Anything else you want to get at with this Whitecloak section?
Just that as he's thinking about all of Bayar's tales, I think more and more he realized all he really wanted was one dark friend. More than the Trollocs, more than Aes Sedai, he wanted Perrin and Alanna. He could hardly credit Bayar's tales of the man running with wolves, but Bayar was clear enough that Alanna had led to Bornhald's father into a dark friend trap. All of that, I think, is enhanced by Grendal's compulsion. All those stories, all that stuff about Bornhald's father, I think that's all Grendal compulsion. Because when we saw him leaving the battle, and we've talked about this, but when he left the battle in Falma, he's like, oh yeah, I saw that dark friend Perrin and Alanna, but he didn't blame Bornhald's death on him. That very much seems to be a change. And we know at some point, based on Sanderson's writings at the end of the series, we're almost entirely sure that Bayar was compelled at some point by Grendal.
Yeah, I always liked that theory. It makes a lot of sense.
And the most obvious time would be when he's coming back from Falma. He crosses basically right through Grendal's territory. So I think her compulsion was basically she set him up as a direct, basically another hound to attack Perrin specifically.
I like that. Cut one of the legs from the stool.
And this entire time, Bayar is obeying that compulsion by pointing Bornhald and the Whitecloaks at Perrin and Perrin's home.
Too bad for them. They end up making him a king.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I want to talk, again, we see Fain's accent swapping back and forth between his Lugarder accent, which is the Fain accent, and his more commanding, arrogant, oily one, which is his Mordeth accent. So when you hear him being smooth, that's the Mordeth personality taking over.
Two different people.
Totally. Mostly the power has come together, but for now there's still two different personalities sort of taking turns.
The man who called himself Ordeith, even sometimes thought of himself as Ordeith, slunk through the tents of the Children of the Light, watching the white-cloaked men with a wary eye. Useful tools, ignorant tools, but not to be trusted, especially not Bornhald. That one might have to be disposed of if he became too troublesome. Bayar would be much more easily handled, but not yet. There were other matters more important. Some of the soldiers nodded respectfully as he passed. He showed them his teeth and what they took for a friendly smile. Tools and fools. His eyes skittered hungrily across the tent holding the prisoners. They could wait, for a while yet. A little while longer. They were only tidbits anyway. Bait. He should have restrained himself at the Abarra farm, but Con Abarra had laughed in his face, and Jocelyn had called him a filthy-minded little fool for naming her son Darkfriend. Well, they had learned. Screaming. Burning. In spite of himself, he giggled under his breath. Tidbits. He could feel one of those he hated out there somewhere, south toward Emmons Field. Which one? It did not matter. Rand al'Thor was the only really important one. He would have known if it was al'Thor. Rumor had not drawn him yet, but it would. Ordeith shivered with desire. It had to be so. More tales must be gotten past Bornhald's guards at Terran Ferry. More reports of the scouring of the two rivers, to drift to Rand al'Thor's ears and sear his brain. First, al'Thor, then the tower, for what they had taken from him. He would have all that was his by right. Everything had been ticking along like a fine clock, even with Bornhald impeding, until this new one appeared with his gray men. Oh, there you go. An answer to our question.
Yeah, that's the quote that I was thinking about, is that this new one is Slayer, and the gray men that he showed up with are the gray men.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ordeith scrubbed bony fingers through greasy hair. Why could not his dreams at least be his own? He was a puppet no longer, danced about by Myrddraal and forsaken. By the Dark One himself. He pulled the strings now. They could not stop him, could not kill him. Nothing can kill me, he muttered, scowling. Not me. I have survived since the Trolloc Wars. Well, a part of him had. He laughed shrilly, hearing madness in the cackle, knowing it, not caring. A young Whitecloak officer frowned at him. This time there was nothing of a smile on Ordeith's bared teeth, and the fuzzy-cheeked lad recoiled. Ordeith hurried on with a slinking shuffle. Flies buzzed about his tents, and sullen, suspicious eyes flinched away from his. The Whitecloaks were soiled here, but the swords were sharp, and obedience instant and unquestioning. Bornhald thought these men were still his. Pedro Niall believed it too. Believed Ordeith, his tame creature. Fools. Twitching aside his tent flap, Ordeith went in to examine his prisoner, stretched out between two pegs thick enough to hold a wagon team. Good steel chain quivered as he checked it, but he had calculated how much was needed, then doubled it. As well he had. One loop less, and these stout steel links would have broken. With a sigh, he seated himself on the edge of his bed. The lamps were already lit, more than a dozen, leaving no shadow anywhere. The tent was as bright inside as noonday. Have you thought over my proposal? Accept, and you walk free. Refuse? I know how to hurt your sort. I can make you scream through endless dying. Forever screaming. The chains hummed at a jerk. The stakes driven deep into the ground creaked. Very well. The Myrddraal's voice was a dried snakeskin crumbling. I accept. Release me. Ordeith smiled. It thought him a fool. It would learn. They all would. First, the matter of, shall we say, agreements and accord. As he talked, the Myrddraal began to sweat.
Do you think he can bind them to their word?
No, I don't see how that would work, but we know he can, get in people's heads. Can make you see things that aren't there, make you have nightmares. I don't know what the fate expects Fain might do to him, but it's afraid.
Well, we know he has his tricks with touch, and he can, cause pain and stuff like that. So
right, that's one of them.
And clearly he was able to chain the Myrddraal up in the first place. And you notice, I like what Morgaines is saying here, that the bright light is there, so there's no shadows for the Myrddraal to slip away on.
Yeah, so it can't escape.
I also notice how he talks about why my dreams can't be my own. I was wondering if maybe one of the Slayer is... it must be Slayer and Tel'aran'rhiod Riyadh messing with him, trying to get into his dreams and kill him that way.
I would think so.
That's the only thing I can think of with that line. Either that,
unless
or it's
one of
totally
the Forsaken,
insane.
maybe.
Yeah.
There could be a lot going on there.
Right. But I mean, if it was just his insanity, I don't think he'd be like, why can't it be my own? I think it would be his own insanity. I think the fact that someone's messing with his dreams, and my money would be on Slayer as a dreamwalker.
Seems right. But for some reason, Slayer hasn't been able to kill Fain yet, and never is.
Yeah, Fain's pretty powerful.
Mistress Leia wanted to make sure we gave a big congratulations to our very own Cody for winning the Watt Spoiler website art contest. He did a brilliant job live casting his progress through a mashup sci-fi fantasy poster. Once you see it, you'll spend quite some time pondering not only the Watt references, but the crossover themes. Check it out at spoilercon.org.
I will admit that the judging process was pretty consuming. We had to spend a lot of time debating all the various entries and comparing them it came down to a pretty tough final vote, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. Cody was the only entry.
Are you being facetious? Oh. It's like I wasn't there for that. I don't know.
So thank you to Cody.
Down for all nerd culture stuff. I can't wait till Vox and Raven Media has 1 million nerd culture podcasts.
Right. I mean, I want to employ a bunch of people, right? Like, first of all, me and you.
Yeah, right. I had someone shoot me a message on, I think, Facebook today. And all it was, okay, hear me out. Avatar The Last Airbender, spoilers. I just got back to him. I was like, dude, I wish we could do all this stuff. Like, we would do that if we had time. Last Airbender wouldn't be my top priorities, though.
There's a whole video thing. Yeah, I see where Airbender comes in, especially with Wheel of Time, where the 4 powers and the way they kind of overlap and the similarity to bending and weaving, and like there's very similar sort of themes and a similar sort of audience. And I do think The Last Airbender is brilliant, but I don't think it needs a spoilers cast.
I'll probably have to eat my words one day, but I would love to do a Lord of the Rings. I know you're not into it. But
no, not at all.
Some people would be.
No. A lot of people would be. But there's so many out there already. That's the thing, is like, you want to do a Lord of the Rings spoilers, there's people out there who know it and love it and like
are better than me. I know.
Yeah, you know. Go listen to the Prancing Pony. Like, just go listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, Prancing Pony's good, but I do kind of want to point out we're a little bigger than they are. I mean, Watt Spoilers is bigger than Prancing Pony. In
what measurement? The Patreon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I gauge it.
And we're newer, too. So, anyway. Are we done stroking our own egos?
Yeah, I think so.
And, again, this is where, like, I do believe the first people I would want to hire would be, like, another editor. Have John, hire John, Leah would probably be more of a contract thing, but get her to do some more artwork, that sort of, I have a whole list of people that I want to work for us.
God, if we could just have John work for us, like, really. I mean, he already is. All right. Chapter 31.
We're repeating ourselves. Yep.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?